Good morning. Thank you all for being here. I'm State Representative Avery Bourne. I have the privilege of representing the 95th Legislative District, which is all or parts of Christian, Montgomery, Macoupin, and Madison counties, and I am from Morrisonville. This morning we're here to talk about the redistricting process. Redistricting is a decennial, regular process that has a huge impact on how Illinoisans will be represented for the next 10 years. And because of the gravity of this process, it's important that this is taken out of the hands of partisans and is independent and fair. This process, in fact, is the way that the Governor Pritzker himself promised that he wanted the process to go when he campaigned and made a campaign promise. He wanted it taken out of the hands of partisans, and he made a pledge that he would veto any map that was drawn by partisans. While the context may have changed when he was asked that question, it was assumed that Mike Madigan would be drawing the maps. His pledge has not and cannot change. And today I'm here with my colleagues to remind the governor of the promise that he made to Illinois residents and to affirm that House Republicans are here and ready to work with him to make that independent and fair map process happen. We need a fair map and a fair process that allows for fair representation for all Illinoisans. And in fact, if the governor holds to his promise to veto any partisanly drawn map, then he needs to come out and say that now so that the legislature knows that this is a fool's errand to keep going with this redistricting process in a partisan way. But we can set up an independent process, as the governor says in his own quote, even if the Constitution is not amended, an independent process can be set up and then adopted by the legislature. So today we have a real opportunity to set forward a new path for redistricting and provide a fair map for Illinoisans that we haven't seen certainly in my lifetime. We can't afford to squander this opportunity at the expense of Illinois residents and their right to fair representation. I should have mentioned I am also joined today by State Representative Tim Butler, who is the minority spokesperson for the Redistricting Committee in the House, and Congressman Rodney Davis. I will turn it over to Representative Butler.
Thank you, Representative Bourne. My name is Tim Butler. I'm a state representative from the 87th District. I live here in Springfield. I'm also, as Avery pointed out, the Republican spokesperson on the House Redistricting Committee. Today, I'm sending a letter along with Senator Jason Barrickman, who is the Republican spokesperson on the Senate Redistricting Committee, sending a letter to Representative Lisa Hernandez and Senator Omar Aquino, the chairs, respectively, of the House and Senate redistricting committees, asking that the governor himself or a high-level member of his team appear at our April 19th joint House-Senate redistricting committee, which is scheduled in East St. Louis. We have yet to hear from the governor's office, and I believe we've had 20 hearings now in the House. I don't know how many the Senate has had, but we've yet to hear from the governor on his views on redistricting right now as the process is going on. And as Representative Bourne pointed out, it's vitally important that we hear from the governor. He needs to give some direction as to what his thoughts are on what we think will be a partisanly drawn map coming out of the General Assembly this spring. The overwhelming message that we've heard in these hearings, and I've attended almost every single House hearing, the overwhelming message that we've heard from these hearings is that the people want an open, transparent, and citizen-led process to draw the maps for the next 10 years. They want it on the local level, they want it on the legislative level, they want it on the congressional level. And it has been groups from across the political spectrum that have said the same thing. We need citizens more involved, and we need an open and transparent process. The governor supports the commission. His own words have said that in the past. A majority of the legislature supports a commission, either through voting previously for a commission, co-sponsoring legislation for a commission, or in their public statements about a commission. A majority in both chambers supports a commission. But more importantly, the people support a commission. In 2016, we had almost 580,000 Illinoisans that signed petitions to put a commission on the ballot, yet that was kicked off by Mike Madigan, his legal team, and by one judge, a single judge with the Supreme Court, Judge Tom Kilbride, who wrote the majority decision that kicked that off the ballot this year. Or else we would be drawing maps a different way this year, I believe. It seems as though we're doing the same old thing, though. It's for political insiders to draw maps behind closed doors, in spite of the fact of the hearings that we've held, I don't believe that the majority is going to listen to the people and allow people in the room when they're drawing maps, or really to allow people to have a say as to what the lines will be. It's time for the governor to lead. It's time for him to tell the Speaker and the Senate President that he will have nothing to do with a partisanly drawn map, and he tells them to use a commission to set it up. That's the way we should do it. We have legislation out there currently that Senator Barrickman has in the Senate that could provide a commission, that legislation literally we could pass this week and have on the governor's desk. We should pass that legislation. We should set up a commission, and that's the way we should draw the maps. It's the way the people want to have their maps drawn, and I'm fearful that the majority is not going down that path this spring and will once again have partisanly drawn maps in Illinois. With that, I will turn it over to my congressman, Congressman Rodney Davis.
Oh, first off, thanks, Tim. Thanks, Avery. Rodney Davis, represent the 13th District of Illinois. Proud to be here with my state representative, Representative Bourne, and my longtime friend, Representative Butler. I just want to echo what they talked about. I mean, this is a process that the public is demanding be more open, be more transparent. And as Representative Butler said, over 500,000 Illinoisans signed petitions to put a question on the ballot that would have opened up the redistricting process to an independent commission. And because of insider politics right here in Springfield, that ballot question was not allowed to be put to the voters. That's something hopefully we can do again in the future to make this constitutional. But in the end, I think the public's demanding an open, transparent process. And many of our colleagues, including Governor Pritzker, have said in their own words that they would like an open and a transparent process, one that's going to stop politicians from picking their own voters. I'm standing here representing a district that was drawn almost 10 years ago by Democrats here in Springfield to elect a Democrat. Luckily, we've beaten the trend in my case, but it doesn't negate the fact that my district that stretches from 14 counties from the Champaign and Bloomington area down to the Metro East, it's not a coincidence my district includes 4 public universities. I get 100,000 new constituents every 4 years into my district. They did this with political reasons in mind. We understand that. We saw that. We see that. And the public is sick and tired of people in this Capitol building saying one thing about supporting a free and open remap process, but clearly, as we see, doing another. I agree with my colleagues here and also Senator Barrickman that there can be language put forth and passed in the General Assembly to actually allow an independent commission to draw maps now. And one thing, another reason I'm here is to remind the voters of Illinois that it's the Springfield, it's the legislators here in Springfield that actually draw congressional maps too. They're the ones in this building that draw your congressional district that you live in. So it's not just about the congressional map. It's not just about the state legislative maps. It's not about any other redistricting processes specifically, but it's about all of them. And they all need to be put forth in a very open and transparent manner, which we are not seeing. Now, I do also want to talk about what's happening in Washington. I am probably the most avid opponent of a bill that passed the House with 0 Republicans voting for it. It's H.R. 1. You're hearing a lot about this piece of legislation in the news media today. It was an attack on free speech. It was also a bill that included exporting voting systems like ballot harvesting, which has already been ripe with fraud, to every state in the nation, not just the states that have experienced it now. It also was a bill that included $7.2 million in campaign contributions to each and every congressional campaign. Let me reiterate that. Every single Democratic colleague of mine who voted for H.R. 1 voted to allow themselves $7.2 million in public funding to go directly into their own campaigns. That's not something I can support. But there are some good things in that bill. One provision is independent redistricting commissions. I find it very ironic, though, that you have organizations that have been funded robustly over the last decade to go fight for remap proposals in other states that gloss over their own home state of Illinois. Illinois is run by the Democrats who have a supermajority in the House and the Senate. The governor is a Democrat. Many Democrats are on record supporting what Avery and Tim and I are talking about. We are here for one reason only, to remind the citizens of this state who said they're for a fair and open process, and we certainly hope those citizens hold them accountable.
Representative Butler, last time Republicans pushed for this, Democrats, Senator Aquino in particular, he said he had a couple of different oppositions to the idea. One, he doesn't trust the data coming from the former Trump administration census collection. And he also said that it seems Republicans don't want to participate in this process. What's your reaction to that?
Well, first of all, if Senator Aquino doesn't like the data that has come out, then he shouldn't use American Community Survey data, which is what the Democrats are going to use if they draw a map before August. And that is something that we made very clear in the hearings in the House. The use of ACS data is flawed. It does not give a true representation, and it actually undercounts. We've had people testify on the record that ACS data undercounts minority populations and rural communities, communities under 65,000. So I would tell Senator Aquino that maybe he should look at the data that they're actually going to use probably to draw the map. As far as Republican participation, again, I can't speak for the Senate. All I know is we've had several hearings in the House where there's been more Republicans participating in the hearings than we've had Democrats participating in the hearings. I think part of the problem is that there has, even though these, yes, committees have been posted, there truly has not been enough public engagement for the mapping process to get people involved, to get communities involved. Let me remind you, we spent $30 million of state money to ensure that we have a complete count for the census. $30 million. We're putting nothing behind marketing for redistricting to get people involved, but we spent all that money on the census, and yet we're not going to use the census data that's coming through. So I think the Republicans definitely are engaged. We're involved. We've put a lot of proposals out there, and proposals. The proposal that we have out there right now from Senator Barrickman is basically the same language of a Democratic senator, Senator Morrison, that she had in the last General Assembly. So I think the Democrats need to look at themselves and make sure they're held to their words that they've had in the past about supporting free, open, transparent, and people-led commissions.
Representative, you've got 74-44, if I'm not mistaken, in the House. What should the division be under a fair map?
It's 73-45, Dave. We picked up a seat in the last election. Yeah, when we were told we were going to lose 10 seats.
What should it be?
Well, look, I think what I do know is the fact that there's no denying that maps have been drawn in a partisan manner. The current map that we are under in Illinois for the state Senate and the state House and Congress was drawn by Mike Madigan. It was drawn for political reasons. It has divided up neighborhoods. It has divided up communities. Why does Springfield? I think Springfield is the largest community in the state that was split up among 3 Senate districts and 3 House districts. Why was that done? That was done for partisan political reasons, to try to get a new Democrat seats in there. That's what it was done. I don't know what the breakdown is going to be. That's up for the voters to decide. But what I do know is these lines, when you look at them, I made the point in our South Chicago hearing, you have districts in Chicago. We had a very impassioned testimony from a woman who lives on the South Side about the problems in the South Side of Chicago. And what I told her is look at those districts and how your neighborhoods are divided. You have 2 districts that go from the Gold Coast of Chicago all the way down to 95th Street. Now look, and I told her, I said, I'm a kid from downstate, but I know the South Side of Chicago ain't the Gold Coast. But that was done to divide up neighborhoods for political reasons. And that's what I know. If you stop dividing up these communities for political reasons, you are going to see more competitive elections, and probably you're going to see more Republicans in the legislature. I don't know what the right number is, but I guarantee if the lines are more fair, you're going to see more Republicans in the legislature.
Congressman, why would Democrats cede influence to Republicans here on this map in Illinois when Republicans are gerrymandering maps all over the country? Are you going to call on other states, Republicans in other states, to also create an independent commission?
I'm on record as supporting the language on independent commissions at the federal level. Been pretty clear on that. But when you talk about what's been done, you know, fights in states like North Carolina, fights in states like Florida and Pennsylvania have been waged by Democrat groups to call out Republican gerrymandering in those states, and those maps were changed mid-decade. But I find it's very convenient that those same Democrat-led groups failed to come to their home state where they know the supermajority Democrats here in Springfield 9.5 years ago did the exact same thing.
And real quick, while you're there, redistricting expert Dave Wasserman has suggested that Democrats might see an opportunity here to finally oust you with this map. Do you feel like you're fighting for your political life here in Congress?
Do I look like I'm fighting for my political life today? I feel good with whatever outcome happens. Democrats are, I've said this for years, not just here today. Democrats are going to play politics with redistricting. They can't help themselves. And we're seeing this play out even though we have public statements from Democrats like Governor Pritzker and others who have said we need a fair map process. I certainly believe when you look at the demographics of Illinois, you have, I saw a statistic on one of my hearings I did just the other day on the Committee on House Administration where a witness mentioned 44% increase in voting age eligible Hispanic voters. We have one Hispanic congressional district. Should we draw another Hispanic congressional district? Absolutely. That's something that these map makers ought to take into consideration.
Representative Butler, in 2020, Democrats won a supermajority of seats. Many of them got reelected with no opponent. What do you say to the idea that if the Republicans want to be more competitive, they need to run more candidates and better candidates?
Well, I would use myself as an example. My district, the 87th district, was drawn to pack Republicans in it. I was appointed in 2015, in March of 2015, and I've had one opponent this last fall's general election, a Green Party opponent. In 3 elections, I've had one opponent. So the Democrats don't recruit in my area either, and maybe I'm putting a target on my back, but the districts are drawn to make it very difficult to recruit. Look, we on the campaign side are going to have a very robust campaign going into the 2022 election. I'm confident of that under the leadership that we have. And that's up to us to recruit candidates and to make sure that we have candidates running in districts. But at the end of the day, the way these lines are drawn, emanating out of the city of Chicago, because that's where the map making starts, and impacting the entire rest of the state, does make a difference because the political data is used in slicing and dicing neighborhoods to make sure that the Democrats have the highest political gain as possible. And we've seen that happen. We've seen that happen with supermajorities in the General Assembly. We've seen that happen in Congress where they sliced and diced up districts as well. And we've got fewer Republican congressmen than we had a decade ago and 2 decades ago. And that's all because of the fact that they use political data to slice and dice these districts for political gain.
Okay, and I've asked you this question before, but like Congressman Davis, Joe Biden, J.B. Pritzker, Hillary Clinton all carried Illinois by sizable margins. What makes you think if a commission draws the districts that the overall results are going to be any different?
For me or him? You did ask me that the other day.
Yeah. Again, we don't want the politicians, Republican politicians either, picking districts. We want the voters picking who they elect. But we do believe there's a much fairer process. Remember, sometimes the gambles that the Democrats put forth almost a decade ago, they didn't pan out. There were areas, I remember standing in what used to be the old Blue Room, and I ran for state representative in 1996. I was told that there's no way a Republican from Christian County is going to win a state representative district with Christian, Macoupin, and Montgomery counties making up most of it. And you know what? In 1996, they were right. I did not win. But you know who represents that area now? Because the demographics have changed? Representative Bourne does.
I think he's talking about statewide. I think he's talking about statewide folks and the statewide makeup.
A statewide race is much different. A statewide race, though, does not mean that it can be indicative of what's going to happen in every geographic portion of the state. I guess I would ask the question to each of you, do you think a Republican will ever win a statewide seat in Illinois again? I know I think so.
You know, speaking of that segues into an interesting question. Where are you on running for governor next time?
My first choice is to run for re-election in Washington, D.C. I've been open and transparent about that. But my future, Avery's future, Tim's political future, it all hinges right now on the supermajority Democrats being able to have a fair process.
Congressman, the maps in Illinois do not rate very highly on political competitiveness, but they do rank highly on protecting and preserving the voices and the votes of minority populations. Illinois Republicans are 0 for 33 in competing or winning in majority minority districts. Why is that?
Well, we need to do a better job, but that doesn't negate the fact that I mentioned earlier that we ought to have Democrats here in Springfield seriously consider drawing another Hispanic district, because they're underrepresented right now in the congressional map that we're running under and operating under.
Representative Bourne, can I respond back to Mark on that one? Mark, I think this is to my point about the ACS data. So we had a hearing about Lake County the other day. Lake County has, I think, 5 or 6 state representatives that are in it. A growing Latinx population, 22%, if not more, in Lake County. Yet there's 5 white males that represent a white female and an African-American female that represent Lake County. Yet the Latino population is aced out. And this has happened across the state. The Latino population in Illinois is actually higher than the African-American population, but that's not represented in the Illinois General Assembly. It's not. And so to my point about using the ACS data, if the Democrats use that, will undercount the Latinx population. I've made that point in hearings, and they seem to not be paying attention to it. There's a growing Latinx population in the state, out into the suburbs, into Kane County, into DuPage County, into these areas, yet the maps don't reflect that. And I doubt the maps will reflect that if what they pass at the end of June is passed. I really don't think that's going to be the case. As far as being 0 for 33, Congressman Davis is exactly right. We need to recruit better in the Republican Party. That's on us. But that doesn't mean that the maps aren't fair for certain populations as well.
Congressman, you've got folks who think that Trump really should still be president. You've also got folks like Adam Kinzinger. What is the correct lane for the Republican Party in Illinois? And if you could address the mic, please.
Certainly the election didn't work out the way I wanted it to. But just a few weeks ago, I was in the Oval Office with President Biden, Vice President Harris, and Secretary Buttigieg talking infrastructure. I pleaded with them to please not hijack infrastructure and make it a partisan process. It seems to me that unfortunately they may not have been given the opportunity to work in a bipartisan way. And really, bipartisanship is what Adam and I want. We want to see some bipartisan agreements. We were optimistic. Remember, Democrats were supposed to pick up how many seats in the State House? 10? Well, they were supposed to pick up 15 to 25 in the U.S. House, including mine. And instead, we picked up, I think there's still some vacancies now, but I think we were about a plus 11 or 12. And because of the small majorities that we were going back to, we were very optimistic that bipartisan people like myself, I was ranked the 13th most bipartisan member of the House in the last Congress, that we could come together and get some things done. But unfortunately, Speaker Pelosi hasn't allowed Democrats or Republicans to do that, and I think we're seeing that right now too, Dave.
Yeah, time for one more. Yes, Representative Bourne, you're part of the new age in Illinois politics, the new group that comes through. Obviously, we know right now the Democrats want to push forward with the way that they're doing the maps. If things don't change here, how do you convince younger Illinois voters that relate to younger lawmakers that things will change here and that it won't be the same games of Mike Madigan, even though he's no longer in this House?
I think we're making a lot of progress, and the more new people we can bring into the fold, I think the better. We have these decades-old systems that are made to protect incumbents, that are made to protect political machines, and that's just not what millennials and the newer generation's support. We have bipartisan support for a commission, and I believe that the real way to get away from these archaic old systems of protecting the party or the machine is to bring new people into the fold. So I actually think when young people see a reason to get involved and think that they can make a change, that's why they step up. That's why I stepped up, is because I don't want this to continue the way that it's been. And certainly, we've only had, 2 redistricting processes in my lifetime. Hopefully the next one's a little better.
I've got one more for the
Thank you for
Congressman.
reminding us.
What kind of voter irregularities are there that would justify some of the voter-related, election-related bills that are somewhere around the country?
Well, in North Carolina's 9th district after the 2018 election, a Republican who won was not seated because he utilized a process called ballot harvesting that was illegal in North Carolina to harvest ballots, to go knock on doors of people who had requested mail-in ballots. He asked for those ballots, promised to return them, and then didn't do that. That same process is legal in California. This gentleman will probably go to jail and have a felony on his record because of what he did in the state of North Carolina. And this Republican operative, if he did this in California, likely no one would have noticed. That's a process that's already been corrupt with fraud. That's one example where a Republican was not seated and we had to have a special election before a Republican won.